Council's dilemma. The emergency session alarm echoed through the massive corridors of the Galactic Council station. Representatives from 47 different species hurry toward the main assembly hall, their various forms of locomotion creating a symphony of clicks, slithers, and mechanical whirs against the polished floors. Something significant had happened, and the urgency in the air was thick enough to taste. Commander Thylex stood at the central podium, his scaled green skin reflecting the harsh lighting of the chamber. His reptilian eyes swept across the assembled delegates, each representing civilizations that had contributed to the peaceful order of the galaxy for over 3 centuries. Today that peace felt fragile. Fellow representatives, Thylex began, his voice carrying the authority of his position as Council Security Chief. We face an unprecedented problem. The human vessel designated Stellar Wanderer has once again violated established protocols, and this time, the consequences demand immediate action. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Zentari delegation, tall blue-skinned beings known for their logical approach to everything, exchanged glances through their large black eyes. The Korath representatives, insectoid creatures with compound eyes and chitinous exoskeletons, clicked their mandibles in what their species considered deep thought. Even the peaceful Thalassians, aquatic beings in their specialized environmental suits, bubbled with concern. What did they do this time? Asked Representative Vexhai, a Zentari whose voice carried the cold precision of his species. The last report mentioned something about unauthorized modifications to their vessel's life support systems. Thylex activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Images filled the air showing the human ship that looked nothing like the standardized vessels approved by the Council. The Stellar Wanderer appeared to be a patchwork of different technologies, with sections that clearly didn't belong to any single design philosophy. 3 days ago, Thylex continued, the Stellar Wanderer entered the Kepler 452 system without proper clearance. They ignored 17 separate communication attempts from system traffic control. When finally contacted, their captain claimed they were following a hunch about potential survivors from the missing research station. The display shifted to show wreckage floating in space around a damaged orbital platform. The Helix research station had been declared lost with all hands after a cascade failure in its fusion reactors. The official investigation had concluded that no survivors were possible given the nature of the explosion. The humans ignored this conclusion. Thylex said, his voice growing more strained. They performed what they called a creative scan of the debris field. They discovered 17 survivors in a shielded section of the station that our sensors had missed. These beings had been trapped for 6 days. Representative Clore, a massive creature resembling a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, shifted his bulk in his reinforced chair. That sounds like a positive outcome. Why are we treating this as a violation? Because of how they achieved it, Thylex replied, his scales changing to a deeper shade of green, indicating his growing frustration. They modified their sensor array using components from their food processors, somehow converting taste detection equipment into a life sign scanner. They then used their ship's emergency thrusters to create a controlled explosion that cleared debris without damaging the survivor compartment. The chamber fell silent. The concept of using food processors as sensor equipment violated so many safety protocols that most species couldn't even comprehend where to begin cataloging the infractions. But it worked, observed Dr. Kill, a Thalassian whose aquatic voice bubbled through her suit's speakers. The survivors were rescued. That's exactly the problem, Thylex said, his voice rising. It worked. The humans consistently achieve positive results through methods that should be impossible, dangerous, or both. They're making our carefully constructed safety protocols look irrelevant. The display changed again, showing a timeline of human interventions over the past year. Each incident involved the Stellar Wanderer and her crew responding to emergencies or crises in ways that defied conventional wisdom. 2 months ago, they prevented a plague outbreak on Rigel 7 by using their ship's artificial gravity system to create a centrifuge for vaccine production. Thylex continued. Last month, they stopped a civil war on Kepler 438 bits by organizing a planet-wide sporting event using their cargo bay as a venue. They turned their waste recycling system into a terraforming tool, their communication array into a musical instrument for first contact protocols, and their weapons systems into mining equipment. Representative Zephyr, a gaseous being contained within a crystalline framework, spoke with a voice like wind through leaves. Each of these actions produced beneficial outcomes. Perhaps we should study their methods rather than punish them. Study them. Phylex's scales now displayed an alarming shade of red. They'd been formally warned 15 times. They've been fined for safety violations on 37 occasions. They've been temporarily banned from 12 different star systems. And their response to every punishment is to find more creative ways to help people. The irony wasn't lost on the assembled delegates. The humans were being punished for being too helpful. "What's their captain's background?" asked Representative Vex High, his logical mind seeking data to understand the situation. Philex consulted his datapad. Captain Sarah Chen, age 34, former Earth Space Navy. Her crew includes Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, who apparently believes that every problem can be solved with enough determination and spare parts. Dr. Elena Vasquez serves as both medical officer and xenobiologist, specializing in creative treatment methods. Their tactical officer, James Thompson, has military experience but seems to view every situation as an opportunity for what humans call thinking outside the box. "What are you proposing?" asked Clore, his massive form leaning forward with interest. "I propose that we send an official investigation team to examine the Stellar Wanderer and determine whether their methods can be standardized and regulated," Philex said. "If we can understand how they achieve these results, perhaps we can incorporate their techniques into our official protocols." The chamber erupted in discussion. The concept of changing established protocols was almost as radical as the humans' methods themselves. "And if their methods can't be standardized?" asked Dr. Kill. Phylex's expression grew serious. "Then we'll have to consider restricting human vessels to their own solar system until they can demonstrate compliance with galactic safety standards." The weight of this statement settled over the chamber. Restricting an entire species to their home system was a measure that hadn't been used in over a century. "Who would lead this investigation?" asked Representative Zephyr. "I volunteer," came a voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to see Overseer Xark rising from his position among the observer seats. Xark was a Nexari, a species known for their methodical approach to problem-solving, and their four-armed physiology that allowed them to multitask with impressive efficiency. Overseer Xark has 30 years of experience in safety compliance, Philex noted. He's conducted investigations across 23 different species and has never failed to identify solutions to regulatory problems. Sark approached the podium, his four arms moving independently as he organized his thoughts. "I've reviewed the reports on the Stellar Wanderer," he said, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to dealing with complex problems. "The humans appear to operate under a fundamentally different approach to problem-solving than most species. They seem to view regulations as suggestions rather than requirements." "Exactly," Philex agreed. "They need to understand that our protocols exist for good reasons." "Perhaps," Clark replied, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "I'll need a team of specialists and a fully equipped investigation vessel. I estimate the inspection will take approximately 1 week." "You'll have everything you need," Philex assured him. "This investigation will determine whether humans can be trusted to operate freely in galactic space." As the formal vote was called and the investigation approved, none of the delegates realized they were about to witness something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about problem-solving, safety protocols, and the nature of helping others. The Stellar Wanderer continued on its course through the Kepler 452 system, completely unaware that its next adventure would involve not just saving lives, but potentially changing the way an entire galaxy thought about rules, regulations, and the sometimes chaotic nature of doing the right thing. Captain Sarah Chen stood on her ship's bridge, reviewing the latest sensor data from their successful rescue operation. Her crew worked around her with the easy efficiency of people who had learned to trust each other completely. They had no idea that 47 different alien species were currently debating whether their methods were too dangerous to be allowed. "Captain," called out Marcus Webb from the engineering station, "I'm getting some interesting readings from the outer system. Looks like we might have company soon." Sarah looked at the display showing an approaching vessel with official Galactic Council markings. "Looks like we're about to have visitors," she said calmly. "Make sure everything's working properly." Marcus grinned, an expression that had worried many aliens over the years. "Define properly," he said. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Sarah Chen began to suspect that their next adventure was going to be more complicated than usual. The investigation and revelation. The Council investigation ship Harmony of Purpose docked with the Stellar Wanderer with the precision that came from following exact protocols. Overseer Xark checked his 4 datapads simultaneously, each displaying different aspects of the inspection checklist he'd developed over 3 decades of compliance work. Behind him, his team of specialists prepared their equipment with the methodical efficiency that the galaxy had come to expect from official investigations. "Remember," Xark addressed his team, "we're here to determine whether human methods can be standardized and regulated, maintain professional objectivity, and document everything." The airlock cycled open, and they were greeted by Captain Sarah Chen herself. She was smaller than most of the aliens had expected, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was clean but showed signs of practical use, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced challenges that most beings couldn't imagine. "Welcome aboard the Stellar Wanderer," Sarah said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Captain Chen. I hope you folks brought appetites because our cook has been experimenting with cuisine from 17 different worlds." Xark consulted one of his datapads. "This is a formal safety inspection, Captain. We're not here for recreational purposes." "Everything we do here serves a purpose," Sarah replied with a smile that somehow managed to be both welcoming and slightly dangerous. "Even the food. Alina's been working on nutritional supplements that can help with radiation exposure, useful when you're rescuing people from damaged reactors." Dr. Vasquez appeared at Sarah's shoulder, a woman with warm brown skin and eyes that held the intense focus of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. "The key is combining Regellian protein synthesis with Zentari mineral absorption," she explained to the somewhat startled inspection team. "Most species can't process the combination, but humans can adapt to almost anything if you give us enough time and motivation." "Violation number 1, muttered Xark's food safety specialist, a Korath whose compound eyes were already documenting the various substances they could detect in the ship's atmosphere. "Unauthorized experimentation with xenobiological materials." "It's not unauthorized," Dr. Vasquez replied cheerfully. "I have degrees in xenobiology, biochemistry, and emergency medicine. Plus, I've been eating weird things since I was a kid. My grandmother used to make soup from whatever vegetables she could find. Same principle, bigger scale." As they moved through the ship, Xark's team discovered that the Stellar Wanderer was even more unusual than their reports had suggested. The corridors were lined with what appeared to be a hybrid of official equipment and creative modifications. Cables were routed through spaces that shouldn't have been accessible, and control panels had been modified with components that clearly came from entirely different systems. "This is the main engineering section," announced Marcus Webb, appearing around a corner with grease-stained hands and a grin that made several of the aliens step backward. "She's not much to look at, but she's got it where it counts. We've made a lot of special modifications ourselves." The engineering bay was a testament to human ingenuity and complete disregard for standardized design principles. The main fusion reactor was surrounded by equipment that Xark's technical specialist couldn't identify, despite having studied propulsion systems from 37 different species. "What is that?" asked the specialist, a crystalline being whose natural form allowed him to interface directly with most computer systems. "That's our efficiency booster," Marcus said proudly. "I built it using parts from our waste recycling system, some components from the food processors, and a piece of art that Alina brought from Earth. The recycling system was designed to break down organic waste at the molecular level, so I figured, why not use that same process to optimize fuel consumption? You're using waste processing equipment to modify your reactor?" Zark asked, all four of his arms now busy taking notes. "Sure," Marcus replied. "It's all about understanding what each system actually does, rather than just what it's supposed to do. The waste processor breaks down complex molecules into simpler ones. The reactor combines simple molecules into more complex ones. It's like having a conversation between systems." The technical specialist's crystalline form flickered with what his species considered deep confusion. "That should be impossible. The waste processor operates on biological matter, while the reactor processes metallic fuel compounds." "Yeah, but at the molecular level, it's all just atoms doing their thing," Marcus explained. "I had to make some adjustments to the processing chamber and modify the containment fields, but the basic principle works great. We get about 30% better fuel efficiency, and our waste disposal is way more thorough." "Violation number 15, Zark muttered, but he was beginning to sound less certain about the severity of the problems they were documenting. Their tour was interrupted by an alarm that echoed through the ship. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system with the calm urgency of someone accustomed to emergencies. "All senior staff to the bridge. We got a distress call from the Helix mining station. They're reporting a cascade failure in their asteroid processing facility, with approximately 200 workers trapped inside." The inspection team found themselves being swept along to the bridge, where they witnessed the Stellar Wanderer's crew transition from casual tour guides to focused professionals with impressive speed. "Report," Sarah said as she took her position in the captain's chair. "Mining station suffered a power overload when they hit a pocket of unstable isotopes," reported James Thompson from the tactical station. He was a large man with the bearing of someone who had seen combat, but his voice carried the careful precision of someone who had learned to think before acting. "The explosion damaged their evacuation systems. They got maybe 4 hours of life support left, but the debris field is too dangerous for conventional rescue." Conventional rescue, Dr. Vasquez noted from her position at the science station, being the key phrase. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the mining station surrounded by floating chunks of radioactive asteroid debris. Any ship attempting a rescue would have to navigate through a field of material that could damage systems or contaminate rescue teams. "Marcus, can you modify our shields to handle the radiation?" Sarah asked. "Already working on it," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across control panels. "I'm routing power from the artificial gravity system and using the waste processor's molecular breakdown chamber to create a radiation absorption field. Should give us about 15 minutes of protection." "You're going to use your artificial gravity to create a radiation shield?" asked Zark, his 4 arms now working frantically to document what he was witnessing. "Gravity manipulation creates space-time distortion," explained Dr. Vasquez. "Radiation is electromagnetic energy traveling through space-time. If you distort the space around the ship, you can deflect the radiation away from the hull." "That's not how gravity works," protested Zark's physics specialist. "It's not how gravity is supposed to work," corrected James Thompson. "But Marcus figured out how to make it work that way. We used the same technique to break up that asteroid swarm threatening the colony on Rigel 7. The Stellar Wanderer began moving toward the mining station at a speed that seemed reckless given the hazardous environment. But as Zark watched, he realized that every maneuver was precisely calculated. The ship moved through the debris field like it was dancing, each motion designed to avoid collision, while maintaining course toward the trapped miners. "Approaching the station," reported Dr. Vasquez. "I'm reading 213 life signs, but they're scattered throughout the facility. Standard evacuation would require multiple trips." We don't have time for multiple trips, Sarah said. James, can you use the cargo transporters to get everyone out at once? Cargo transporters aren't designed for biological matter, James replied, but Alina's been working on some modifications to the pattern buffers. We might be able to transport everyone if we reduce the resolution and increase the batch size. You're going to transport people using cargo equipment? Zark asked, his voice rising with what his species considered alarm. We're going to save people using whatever equipment we have, Sarah corrected. Alina, will it work? It should work, Dr. Vasquez said, her hands moving across her controls. I've been studying transporter technology for months. The key is understanding that the difference between transporting cargo and transporting people is really just a matter of resolution and safety protocols. If we're careful about the pattern recognition and don't try to transport anyone with serious medical conditions, we should be able to get everyone out in one operation. Should be able to. Kazark repeated. 97% probability of success, Dr. Vasquez said confidently. Better odds than leaving them to die in a radiation-contaminated mining station. The rescue operation took 12 minutes. The Stellar Wanderer positioned itself as close to the mining station as possible, extended its shields to protect the damaged facility, and began the largest non-standard transport operation in galactic history. 213 miners materialized in the ship's cargo bay, confused but alive. Medical teams to Cargo Bay 1, Dr. Vasquez announced. We've got miners with radiation exposure and possible decompression injuries. As the rescued miners were treated and transferred to safety, Zark realized that he had witnessed something remarkable. The humans hadn't just saved lives. They had done it using methods that violated dozens of safety protocols, while somehow remaining safer than conventional rescue operations. I don't understand, he said to Captain Chen as they watched the last of the miners being transferred to a medical transport. Your methods are completely unauthorized, but your results are consistently better than standard procedures. Sarah looked at him with an expression that was both amused and serious. Overseer Zark, regulations exist to keep people safe. But sometimes, keeping people safe means ignoring regulations. The question isn't whether we're following the rules. The question is whether we're doing the right thing. But how do you know that your methods will work? Kazark asked. How do you know that modifying your equipment won't cause catastrophic failures? We don't, Marcus admitted, joining the conversation. But we know that not trying definitely won't work. So we test our modifications carefully. We prepare for multiple contingencies, and we accept that sometimes the best solution is the one that nobody's tried before. That's chaos, Clark said, though his tone suggested he was beginning to understand something important. That's humanity, Dr. Vasquez replied. We've been solving problems with whatever tools we have available for our entire history. We've learned to be creative because we've had to be. The universe is full of problems that don't have standard solutions. As the Stellar Wanderer prepared to continue its journey, Zark found himself faced with a decision that would affect not just the human crew, but the entire galaxy's approach to regulation and safety. I need to make my report to the Council, he said finally. What are you going to tell them? Sarah asked. Zark looked around the bridge of the Stellar Wanderer, at the crew who had just saved 200 lives using methods that violated every safety protocol he knew, and realized that some problems required solutions that couldn't be found in any manual. I'm going to tell them that maybe it's time to write some new rules, he said. Rules that account for the fact that doing the right thing isn't always the same as doing the safe thing. And in the end, that's exactly what he did.